Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Okay. Jaya Nanda Jaya Nanda Jaya Jaya Jagannatha Jagannatha Baladeva Jaya Subhadra Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Ki Gaur Premanandi. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chapter 65 from Canto 10 of Srimad Bhagavatam. Yesterday evening, we completed the previous chapter, Krishna's rescuing King Nriga. Maybe some of you were not with us yesterday. So just a quick review because it flows into today's verse or chapter. King Nriga, the story begins during Krishna's pastimes in Dwarka, where he had not only children but grandchildren. Krishna resided in Vrindavan for not so long. There's many pastimes of Krishna in Vrindavan, but the years that he spent in Vrindavan, according to our acharyas, was 10 years, 8 months. That's it. And that's when he was taken to Mathura. And in Mathura, he did a number of things. Of course, killing of Kamsa and reinstalling King Ugrasena on the throne. It's like, although he's 11-year-old boy, on his say-so, that's what happened, because he killed wicked Kamsa. And then Krishna received his Upanayana, because it's tradition for Kshatriya boys, when they turn 11, that's when they receive their sacred thread. And then, time for school. And off he went to the school of Sandipani Muni, and he finished school in 2 months. And then he came back to Mathura. And while in Mathura, some prominent things he did, 3 prominent things. He had promised to visit again with Akrura. There's a whole section, he visits Akrura. And he promised to pay a visit to Kubja, so he visits Kubja. He's feeling some anxiety in separation from the residents of Vrindavan, especially the gopis. So he sends Uddhava to meet with the gopis. he sends Akrura to go do a spy mission in Hastinapur because he hears some rumblings. There's not good things going on in Hastinapur, so he sends Akrura to do a spy mission. And then a major thing that happens is the two wives of Kamsa were daughters of Jarasandha. And those two daughters of Jarasandha went back to Jarasandha and wanted revenge. So he took a vow, Jarasandha took a vow that he would destroy not just Krishna, but the entire Yadu dynasty. It worked the other way. His entire 8 Akshohini divisions of soldiers were destroyed except for one person, him. Krishna told him, "You can go home now." And he was very embarrassed. He was going to give up his life. But his ministers persuaded him, no, it's just one of those things. You weren't prepared. And gather a big army and be victorious. So this went on for another 16 times, or a total of 17 times. So how long does it take to get together so many divisions of soldiers so that 17 times you can attack Mathura with so many divisions of soldiers? Well, I consulted many learned devotees, and there isn't a clear answer to how long. The question was, how long did Krishna stay in Mathura? It's clear how long he stayed in this world, 125 years. It's clear how long he stayed in Vrindavan, 10 years, 8 months. So for some period of time, and the closest I could get to the one learned devotee said, the pastimes are very clear, the chronology is not. So 25 years total is this learned devotee's estimation. So we add 10 years, 8 months to another 25 years approximately, and the rest was in Dwaraka. So we're hearing Krishna's Dwaraka pastimes. And from the beginning of his leaving Mathura with the defeat of Muchukunda, with a little assist from, Kalyavana with an assist from Muchukunda, and then running from the battlefield, etc., from Jarasandha. Balaram's marrying on the way before they even got to Dwaraka. Balaram married Revati. And then the next 3 chapters, Krishna's marrying of Rukmini, very exciting pastime. And then the very next chapter is their first son, Pradyumna, and that's very interesting story. Very interesting story. Very interesting story. And then Pradyumna's son, Aniruddha. And that's an interesting story. And then his marrying of other queens after Rukmini. The next 2, Jambavati and Subhadra, Satyabhama, the 3. And then the next chapter is 5 queens. And then 16,100 who were captive princesses by Narakasura. That wonderful narration. And then he constructed palaces for all of them. And Narada wants to visit Dwaraka to see how's it being set up in Dwaraka with 16,108 queens. So he visited, and his visit is described in detail and so forth. and we've heard all this, or at least I've heard all this, that the Krishna's daily pastimes, we heard that description. And then comes later, Krishna is visited again by Narada, who says there's 20,000 kings who are captive by Jarasandha. And the messenger came saying, petitioning Krishna to help, to release them, which means defeat Jarasandha. That's chapter 70. We're at 65, so I'm looking ahead a little bit. And at the same time, Narada pays a visit and says, on behalf of Maharaj Yudhisthira, he's requesting that you come to perform the Rajasuya, or be present for the coronation. There's many things that happen in Hastinapur and the Pandavas' side. Years of things that happened over there. So this is before the Kurukshetra battle. But after this pastime with the children of Krishna, going to the forest, playing, and in the course of their playing, they become thirsty. And when they're thirsty, they find a well, and they look in the well, and they don't find water. They find a big lizard as big as a hill. They try to, out of compassion, they try to lift the lizard out, but they can't. So they go back and tell Krishna, who comes to where the well is and does this prapti siddhi thing. He extends his arm and lifts the lizard out. And by touching the lizard, the celestial personality, King Nriga, comes out. Krishna asks, who are you? How'd you get in this position of being a lizard? And he tells his story. And we heard yesterday evening that story. So the time is, Krishna's been in Dwaraka for quite some time, because he has not only wives, but children and grandchildren. Do you know how many palaces? Bhagavatam tells us how many palaces there were in Dwaraka. We know that Krishna had a palace for each queen, but there's other palaces. How many palaces? As many palaces as there were cows in the herd of Nanda Maharaj. You know how many cows Nanda Maharaj had? 900,000. Prabhu, that's a lot of palaces. 900,000 palaces, not just like homes, palaces. And that's for the VIPs. According to Srimad Bhagavatam, Dwaraka is as opulent as Vaikuntha. How opulent is Vaikuntha? There's no limit. So is there any limit to the opulence of Dwaraka? We heard in his daily activities how many cows Krishna gave away. So for all those cows, they have to be pasturing grounds for the cows. And daily, for the so many Brahmin, daily, he would give away 13,000 plus cows to each Brahmin. And how many Brahmins were there? They had to have the resident. So Dwaraka was a big place. In that whole description of the opulence of Dwaraka, there's a number given to how many bodyguards King Ugrasena had. How many bodyguards did King Ugrasena had? 10 quadrillion bodyguards. So 1,000, million, billion, trillion, quadrillion, 10 quadrillion. And they had wives. They had a home. So how big was Dwaraka? On the one hand, it has to have some limits. But on the other hand, it's without limits. Just like Govardhan Hill, when Krishna lifted Govardhan Hill, what happened? Govardhan Hill expanded by the touch of Krishna. He was so ecstatic being touched by Krishna, Krishna's hand, that the whole of Vrindavan was able, 900,000 cows, and all of the property and everything, because everything outside the hill was flooded. So the point is, I've mentioned this several times, doing it again. Time and space in Krishna's pastimes are very flexible. Very flexible. Transcendentally flexible. There's no material boundaries that can proscribe or circumscribe the expanse of Dwarka. It's a spiritual place that can become big or become small or whatever Krishna wants. No problem. Because he has unlimited potencies. And unlimited means literally unlimited. So now we're at chapter 65. There's the youthful activities of Krishna's children and grandchildren. And Balarama is deciding, well, in Brihat Bhagavatamrita, it says that he was trying to persuade Krishna to go. And in the Bhagavatam, it says he was trying to persuade Krishna to go, but he was advised against going. So let's hear. Lord Balaram visits Vrindavan. Chapter begins. Shukadev Goswami says, O best of the Kurus, that's he's speaking to Parikshit Maharaj, once Lord Balaram, eager to visit his well-wishing friends, mounted his chariot and traveled to Nanda, Gokula. And the chapter summary. In this chapter, Balaram visits Vrindavan, associates with his friends, plays with his gopis, and drags the river Yamuna. Why did Krishna, the great ocean of prema, not go to Braja? This is answered as follows. The Yadus, the Dwarka residents, thought, the gopis are famous for their pure, ecstatic love, and Krishna's parents have intense love for him. Beautiful painting on the left side. This is, the gopis would see Krishna within the trees, especially the tamal trees, because they're blackish in color. Some of you may have been to Brindavan. How many here have been to Brindavan? Okay, many. Those of you that have not yet been to Brindavan, may you one day go to Brindavan. In the courtyard of the Krishna Balaram temple, there's a tamal tree. How blessed is that tamal tree? Because the tamal tree is standing right before the deities and hearing 24-hour kirtan and all the other devotional activities that take place right there in that courtyard. The tree became very old and died, but they took a graft of the tree, and now there's a younger version of that same tamal tree growing in the courtyard. So tamal trees are blackish in color, and the gopis seeing the tamal tree would see Krishna there. That's that painting or drawing. And there's Mother Jasoda, who has ecstatic, intense love for Krishna. And the Yadu clan, they were understanding that this is going to be a problem. Krishna is controlled by pure love, so if he goes to see the Brajvasis, how will he be able to leave them and come back to us? Krishna's thoughts are with the gopis, and the gopis' thoughts are with Krishna. And once they get together again, who knows? He may never come back to Dwarka. With this in mind, the Yadus prevented Krishna from going, knowing that he becomes subservient to the pastimes in which he reciprocates the ever-increasing love of the Vrajvasis. Beautiful painting showing Krishna on top of a tall building in Dwarka, but his thoughts are with the residents of Vrindavan naturally because of his affection for them. Krishna has affection for everyone, and particular affection for those who are devoted to him, and particularly affection for the residents of Vrindavan, and particularly affection for the young gopis. In the painting, there's Nanda and Jasoda in the foreground, and so forth. He has great, great, great affection. Even when in Dwaraka, his thoughts were always in Vrindavan. Balaram, on the other hand, but then neither should Baladev be able to leave his brother Krishna, who was dearer to him than his own life. This argument is settled by saying that Balaram had such eagerness, utkanta, that his discrimination and sense control disappeared. Balaram has affection for the residents of Vrindavan like Krishna naturally, and of course Krishna is at the center of his affection, but his eagerness to visit them, he became a little confused, and so he went. Prevented by Vasudeva and Devaki to go to Braja, Krishna shared his heart's feelings with Balaram, remembering their joyful Horika pastimes with the gopis. Horika is another name for the holy pastimes. There's a very wonderful description of Krishna's childhood pastimes. It took place just after, or shortly after, his deliverance of his father from being swallowed by a big serpent. You know that story? Are you with me? What was the occasion of Krishna being swallowed by a big serpent? Shivaratri. It was Shivaratri. Catch it. Nanda Maharaj and the residents of Vrindavan observed Shivaratri. They went to the northern direction to a temple of Ambika, where Ambika and Lord Shiva were worshipped, to observe Shivaratri. And because it was some distance from Vrindavan, it was in the same jurisdiction of Vrindavan, because they don't leave Vrindavan. Otherwise, they would have gone to visit Krishna in Mathura. They don't leave Vrindavan. But it's in the northern direction. And they spent the night. And the men slept here, the ladies slept there, the children way over there because they would play. And Nanda Maharaj was given a separate place to rest. And when he was resting, a giant serpent started swallowing him. And Nanda called out for Krishna. He didn't call out for the elders. He called out for Krishna because he was remembering the words of Gargamuni. During the name-giving ceremony of Krishna, Gargamuni said a number of things. But one of the things he said was, this son of yours will have powers like Narayana. He didn't say he was Narayana. He didn't say he wasn't Narayana. He just said he'll have powers like Narayana. And when you're in trouble, you call Narayana. I mean, if you're a Jamil, you call Narayana. And if you're Nanda, you call Narayana, because Narayana was his worshipable deity. And Nanda, he worshipped a deity of Lord Nrsingadev. At Nanda Bhavan, there's a deity of Lord Nrsingadev that Nanda Maharaj worshipped. So he called his worshipable deity. But he was thinking his son, because he has powers like Narayana. He called Krishna. Krishna was some distance away. The elders, they came with sticks and started whacking this giant serpent. Didn't work. There were some burning embers left from the fire at night. they were trying to burn the serpent. Didn't work. He kept swallowing like a boa constrictor. He kept swallowing and swallowing. So what did Krishna do? He just put one foot, left foot, placed on the hood, the head of the serpent, and instantly the higher living entity from the heavenly realm came out of the body of the serpent. He had been cursed to take birth as a serpent for being offensive to Brahmanas. He was cursed to become a serpent. Vidyadhara, his previous status. Anyway, after that pastime, they went back to Brindavan. And that's when the Horika pastime took place. And the Horika pastime had something to do with, as young boys and young girls, as was the custom at the time, they would sing and they would dance, and Krishna would sing and dance, and Balaram would sing and dance, the gopis would sing and dance, and they had pastimes, and that's when Shankachuta came. And that's a long story too. But they're remembering their childhood pastimes together in Vrindavan. And Krishna encouraged Balaram to similarly satisfy younger gopis while there. That means when Balaram went, he did several things. One of those things was he pacified the gopis with whom Krishna had danced. And after that was, first he went to, what we hear, he went to see Nanda and Yasoda. And then he went to see the gopis with whom Krishna had danced. And then he went to see some other groups of gopis. So he was giving his association for quite some time in Brindavan. He gave his consent to Balaram to go alone. Enter wearing cowherd attire, carrying a message for various devotees by name, along with a promise that he would personally come after some time. Now, there's another reason given why he didn't go, because in addition to Vasudeva and Devaki didn't give him permission. He's a big boy now, he has grandchildren, but they didn't say okay. But another reason he didn't go, even when he was in Mathura, he didn't go. For as many years as he was in Mathura, it's a hop, skip, and a jump away from Mathura to Vrindavan. Now, Brihat Bhagavatamrita says he went back and forth multiple times, but Bhagavatam doesn't say that. He didn't go because he knew if he went, it would be a signal to those who were inimical kings that he has affection for the residents of Vrindavan, and they would go and harass the residents of Vrindavan, or worse, kill them. So to protect the residents of Vrindavan, he didn't go. Until the last of the demons was killed, and then he went. Did you know that? Krishna went back to Vrindavan. Krishna went back to Vrindavan after killing Dantavakra. It's not in the Bhagavatam, but it's in Vishnu Purana, and our acharyas consistently describe. After killing Shalva, he heard from Narada Muni. Narada Muni plays a really important role in Krishna's pastimes. He informed Narada Muni, Dantavakra wants to take revenge for your killing of Shalva. And he's just on the outside of Mathura. Krishna said, thanks a lot. He got in a chariot, and instantly, it was a very swift chariot, mystical one, instantly he was transported to the western side of Mathura city and battled with Dantavakra and another demon. And then Krishna changed clothes, like he's telling Balaram to go in cowherd boy attire. And then he entered Vrindavan. And Krishna's entering Vrindavan is described in detail by Jiva Goswami. Oh, very, very nice detail in Gopal Champu. So keep immersing yourself in Krishna Katha, and you'll find it's like an ocean that has no bottom. There's probably bodies of water around in Georgia that have big lakes with big, when I was young, I grew up on a lake, on a town that's right near in upstate New York. Some of you kids, you probably know geography. So in upstate New York, there's a set of lakes called the Finger Lakes, because there's 5 of them, and they're long lakes. I grew up at the head of this one. And it was a big lake. It was 17 miles long. But it had a bottom. And bigger than the big lake is like the Great Lakes. Those are really big, but they have a bottom. The ocean has a bottom. But the pastimes of Krishna have no bottom. You keep going and going and going and going and keep going and keep going and keep going, and you expect you're going to find a bottom, and there's no bottom. Then you realize this is what transcendental means. This is what transcendental means. I'm going to spin out on this a little bit more. There's a nice verse, text 61, from Sri Brahma Samhita, that describes how our acharyas understand things that are not even within Scripture. Have you ever wondered about that? You've never wondered about that. I've wondered about that. How do they know things? Well, they're revealed to them. The text is Yadrashi Rajarshi Shraddha Siddhi Bhavati Tadrashi. Now we know that Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur gave a translation in English and includes the Sanskrit of the verses word for word. Yadrashi Yadrashi Shraddha, Shraddha means faith, Siddhi Bhavati. Bhavati means it manifests or it becomes. He translates the word Siddhi as realization. Yadrashi Yadrashi Shraddha Siddhi Bhavati Tadrashi. So great souls, pure devotee, exalted personalities, not speculators, but pure devotees, have things revealed to them. And some of those things that are revealed to them have their corresponding message within the Vedas, within the Puranas particularly, and sometimes not. But we accept them because they're pure devotees expressing realizations about Krishna's pastimes that they're experiencing because they're revealed to them. This revelation. As much as what the Vedas are. The Vedas is revelation. It's Vyasadev's meditation under the order of Narada. In Samadhi, he meditates on the absolute truth. And he has certain realizations, and those realizations become the foundation for Srimad Bhagavatam. Not fiction. It's the revelation of Vyas. And similarly, others have their revelations. So, become familiar with Srimad Bhagavatam and be sure that there will be further illuminations from our acharyas about what we find in Srimad Bhagavatam. And it's an ocean with no bottom. I hope you like swimming in nectar, because that's what it is. Having long suffered the anxiety of separation, the cowherd men and their wives embraced Lord Balaram. The Lord then offered respects to his parents, and they joyfully greeted him with prayers. Nanda and Jasoda prayed, "Oh, descendant of Dasharha." Dasharha is a king who is an ancestor in the Vrishni and dynasty, Dasharha. "Oh, Lord of the universe, may you and your younger brother Krishna ever protect us." Saying this, they raised Sri Balaram onto their laps, embraced him, and moistened him with tears from their eyes. Now notice there's a little asterisk. This shows Nanda's deep affection for Vasudeva, that's his father, Vasudeva and Devaki. Knowing that Balaram was Vasudeva's son, Nanda considered Balaram to be his own with intense affection as a father. This is Vishwanath. Nanda's contemplating. What demons are remaining for Krishna to kill before he returns to be with us again? Balaram lists them. Shishupal, the king of Kashi, Paundraka, Shalva, Jarasandha, Dvidvida, Dantavakra, and Vidurata. A few demons left, then Krishna will come back. Lord Balaram then, so first is go to the elders. This is an etiquette lesson. Balaram then paid proper respects to the elder cowherd men, and the younger ones all greeted him respectfully. He met them all with smiles, handshakes, and so on, dealing personally with each one according to age, degree of friendship, and family relationship. Then, after resting, the Lord accepted a comfortable seat, and they all gathered around him. So it's like a reunion. He's been away, now there's gathering. With voices faltering out of love for him, those cowherds who had dedicated everything to lotus-eyed Krishna asked about the health of their dear ones in Dwarka. And Balaram, in turn, asked about the cowherd's welfare. It's natural, but it's transcendental. So there's natural that's not transcendental, and there's natural that's transcendental. And the destination of the two is not the same. And the sense of satisfaction, sam siddhir haritoshanam, is also not the same. Yenatmastu prasidati, not the same. Oh Rama, are all our relatives doing well? And Rama, do all of you, with your wives and children, still remember us? I'm pausing because about 2 weeks ago or so, I spent some time with my sister, who we grew up together. We were almost the same age, etc., and I haven't seen her for 16 years. And it was like this kind of a question. That's why I'm pausing. Do you still remember us? And then discussing our childhood things together and this and that and the other thing. It's our great fortune that sinful Kamsa has been killed, and our dear relatives have been freed. There's Balaram with his elephant tusk. And it is also our good fortune that our relatives have killed and defeated their enemies and found complete security in a great fortress. Dwarka. After paying due respects to all the elders, Balaram visited each and every home of his childhood cowherd friends. However, his heart being full of separation from Krishna, as were the hearts of the cowherd boys, he could only gaze at the cows both morning and night. He could not bear the absence of Krishna, thus no herding of cows could take place. How can you herd cows without Krishna? Shukadev Goswami continued, honoring Lord Balaram because they had attained his personal audience, the young gopis smiled. These are Krishna's gopis. And asked him, is Krishna the darling of the city women, living happily? Vishwanath writes, the smiling of the gopis was a sign of their unmada, transcendental madness in prema. They weren't feeling happy, they were in a maddened state. Otherwise, how would it be possible for such extremely shy girls, suffering such intense pain of separation from Krishna, to smile in front of Baladev? Understanding that this was a sign of their Mahabhava, Balaram gave them great respect. Balaram honored them with his affectionate glance. Rama Sandarshana, because he understood that these gopis were the dearly beloved devotees of Krishna and were filled with pure love for his younger brother. And Jiva Goswami comments about their smiles and their laughter. Krishna vowed that he would return to Braja. When only Balaram returned and was respectful, in grief they experienced the greatest pain, but expressed it as loud laughter. Unmada means madness in love, or it came out as a kind of grieving or mocking nervous laughter. We're getting a close-up picture of rasa following the footsteps of Rupa Goswami. Does he remember his family members, especially his father and mother? Do you think he will ever come back, even once, to see his mother? Of course, they mean themselves, but they're not referring to themselves. And does mighty armed Krishna remember the service we always did for him? These are natural questions. This is commentary. The gopis asked, is Krishna happy there in Dwarka? Balaram said, how could Krishna be happy being separated from you? The gopis replied, Krishna is enjoying with many beautiful women in the city, so how could he be suffering any unhappiness of separation from us village girls? Certainly he must be happy. Again, commentary. For Krishna's sake, O descendant of Dasharha, we abandoned our mothers, fathers, brothers, husbands, children, and sisters, even though these family relations are difficult to give up. This is a very beautiful painting. On the left, Krishna is in Vangshivat, playing upon his flute, and the gopis, hearing the sound of Krishna's flute, are forcibly carried by the sound of his flute to go to Krishna. But now, O Lord, that same Krishna has suddenly abandoned us and gone away, breaking off all affectionate ties with us. And yet, how could any woman fail to trust his promises? Another beautiful Pushkar painting showing gopis absorbed in thought of Krishna in separation from him. Vishwanath Chakravarti comments, Balaram said, "But, most beloved gopis of Krishna, Krishna is full of love for you and always remembers you." Denying this, the gopis replied, "No, we do not have faith in Krishna's love, since he rejected us, who are solely devoted to him." They expressed this in a verse and a half. The gopis continued, "Though we gave up everything for Krishna, he gave us up immediately and left." Balaram, why didn't you do something to prevent him from going away? Or why didn't you go with him? Gopis, Krishna just tore our bonds of love to shreds like a blade of grass and left. Therefore tell us what we should have done. Balaram, since you are maintaining your lives without him, you also must have broken your ties of love for him. Not all of us, not at all. By his words, "I will return to you," repeatedly sent through messengers, Krishna retied the fetters of love even after they were broken. Again, he took hold of our life heirs as they were about to leave us and reestablish them. Balaram, if you believe Krishna will return, then why are you so disturbed? Gopis, no, this is not correct. Since even now Krishna has still not come, we have concluded that whatever he said was false. Balaram, why did you believe what he said in the first place? Gopis, how could unintelligent, straightforward women like us not believe his words? How can intelligent city women possibly trust the words of one whose heart is so unsteady and is so ungrateful? This is I found this painting. It's Radharani's Talk with the Bumblebee. Notice the bumblebee on the lower right by her right hand. And she's chastising the bumblebee. This one, Akrura is paying a visit upon Krishna's instruction to pacify the gopis. The city women must believe him because he speaks so wonderfully, and also because his beautiful smiling glances arouse their lust. Why bother talking about him, dear Gopi? Please talk of something else. If he passes his time without us, then we shall similarly pass ours without him. They're mad. They can't stop thinking about talking about him, etc., having feelings for him, feeling frustrated, feeling anticipation, feeling transcendental feelings. While speaking these words, the young cowherd women, remembering Lord Shauri's laughter, his pleasing conversations with them, his attractive glances, his style of walking, and his loving embraces. Thus, they began to cry. This is Balaram's visit. Must have been heart-wrenching for them and for him. Plus, Krishna is omniscient. He knows what's going on. The Supreme Lord Balaram, the attractor of all, being expert at various kinds of conciliation, consoled the gopis by relaying to them the confidential messages Lord Krishna had sent with him. These messages deeply touched the gopis' hearts. It's one of the characteristics of Balaram. He likes being a mediator. He likes being a mediator. There's two prominent examples. This is a third. One prominent example was when Samba was imprisoned, Samba became attracted to Duryodhana's daughter, and Duryodhana's daughter became attracted to him. So he went to Hastinapur at her Swayamvar and tried to take her away and was captured. And when the residents of Dwarka found out that Duryodhana, this is before the Kurukshetra battle, obviously, Samba had been imprisoned. Whoa. Ugrasena stood up and he was ready. Bring the entire Yadu army, we'll smash the entire city of Hastinapur. Finished. Balaram stood up. Said, let me try to make peace. So he's good at it, so he went. Didn't go with an army, he went with some ministers, tried to make peace. When he told Duryodhana, who looked up to him, who had received so much from Balaram, when he told them what he wanted them to release Samba and let him marry Duryodhana's daughter. They turned around and left. That was a big mistake. So Balaram took his club and was going to drag the whole of Hastinapur into the Ganges. Finished. So they recognized it was their mistake. They came out, whatever you want. So it ended up, Samba married Duryodhana's daughter, and everything was nice. And another was when Rukmi wanted to take revenge after Krishna kidnapped Rukmini, and the whole big plan was there for Rukmini to marry, of all people, Shishupal. So Rukmi was attacking Krishna. Krishna captured him and was going to chop his head off. Balaram intervened, pacified Rukmini, chastised Krishna, and everything became nice. Rukmi was sent away. He likes being a mediator. He's pretty good at it. So here he's trying to pacify the gopis. Imagine how he felt hearing from them what their feelings are. But he managed to pacify them, carrying Krishna's messages. Lord Balaram consoled the gopis by giving them Lord Krishna's most charming messages. This is from Vishnu Purana, same pastime described elsewhere, which expressed sweet conciliation, which were inspired by his pure love for them, and which were without a tinge of pride. He consoled them with Krishna's messages because they'd entered into those messages, which melted their hearts. Here's the example of Balaram dragging Hastinapur into the river. He liked Samba, the son of Jambavati, had kidnapped Lakshmana. So that was the occasion of that conciliation effort. Sridhar Swami writes, Balaram first consoled them with scriptural teachings, then he praised them to remove their despondency, then he described Krishna's mercy directed to them, then he described with regret various events which delayed Krishna from returning. Then he promised to bring Krishna back with a believable oath. Then he frightened them by saying that Krishna, who held them dearer than 1,000,000 of his lives, would suffer intense grief on hearing of their crying. Very clever, very effective. And so at least for a short while, in Balaram's association, their grief subsided. So what happens next? Knowing Krishna's heart, I have come to Vraja. Knowing his heart deeply, I speak to you with consoling words. If I knew he was indifferent, I would not be able to speak with you, nor would I be satisfied with him. They know how close Balaram and Krishna are. It should be understood that Krishna dispatched Baladev and Uddhava with his intimate messages because they were both his trusted friends, Sakyabhav, without consideration of their other sentiments of servitude. Dasyabhav was Uddhava, and parental love, Vatsalyabhav is Baladev. So there's Baladev. Actually, that it's Krishna. It should be white if it's Baladev, speaking to the gopis. Notice what that structure is in the background. Kusum Sarovar. Those of you who have been to Vrindavan will recognize Kusum Sarovar. And those of you that haven't been to Brindavan, please hurry up and go to Vrindavan and take the mercy. The use, this is Vishwanath, the use of the pearl form indicates that Krishna sent many messages, not one. Some messages instructed the gopis in transcendental knowledge, some were sweet and apologetic, and some were dignified. Being heartfelt, Krishna's messages could not be revealed publicly because of their confidential nature. So Bhagavatam doesn't say what he said. But it seems like Vishwanath is one of those acharyas that knows all kinds of things that are very secret. He knows what Krishna's feelings are. He knows what Krishna's thoughts are and contemplations are. He's like very, very elevated Vaishnava, very elevated confidential realizations. He writes, Balaram boldly exclaimed, Dear gopis, now that I have consoled you, I will go to Dwarka and bring Krishna here by force. I'm not exclusively under Krishna's control like Uddhava. In this way, Balaram displayed his expertise in conciliation. Hearing this, the gopis experienced that they had attained Krishna. That's Jiva Goswami. He was so capable. We accept your words that you will bring Krishna. All these exchangers were with Krishna's gopis, with whom he had performed rasa dance. So what's next? Lord Balaram, the personality of Godhead, resided there for 2 months of Madhu and Madhava, and during the nights he gave his cowherd girlfriends conjugal pleasure. There's Balaram and his rasa dance with a different set of gopis. These were not the same gopis with whom Krishna had conducted his rasa dance. In the company of numerous women, Lord Balaram enjoyed in a garden by the Yamuna river. This garden was bathed in the rays of the full moon and caressed by breezes bearing the fragrance of night blooming lotuses. I hope you're enjoying the artwork here. These paintings of Balaram are fantastic. By Balaram's will, the nights always had a full moon. Sent by the demigod Varuna, the divine Varuni liquor, or a type of liquor that arose along with the nectar of the devas, flowed from a tree hollow and made the entire forest even more fragrant with its sweet aroma. The wind carried to Balaram the fragrance of that flood of sweet liquor, and when he smelled it, he went to the tree, and there he and his female companions drank. Now, one of the wives of Balaram is Varuni. This is a deity of Balaram, where in his left hand he's holding Varuni beverage. His two wives, he first married Revati, we mentioned way back in chapter 50. He married Revati. That's a nice story. Who is Revati the daughter of? King Kukudmi. King Kukudmi. You know that story? Oh, it's a nice story. I'll tell it at the end. I'll tell it now. Kukudmi had a very exalted daughter. He understood she's so exalted, she should marry the best husband. He decided to go visit Lord Brahma and request Brahma for a marriage arrangement. But he went to Brahma's abode. He had to wait because Brahma was listening to a concert. And by the time the concert was over, Brahma came to hear from Kukudmi, what brought you here? Here's my daughter. I need to find a husband for her. And I thought you would be able to help me. And he laughed. Balram laughed. Said, do you realize the time that has taken for this concert to finish? Many, many yuga cycles have passed on earth. When you go back, you don't even know who you are, and you won't recognize anything. But there's one option. Balaram is there, and your daughter can marry Balaram. There's a detail that says when they went back, Balaram accepted from Kukudmi her Revati's hand in marriage. But there was one problem. She was from a previous age and she was really tall. So what the solution was, he took his plow, placed it on her shoulder, and she came the normal size. And they became husband and wife, Balaram and Revati. And Varuni was the second wife. Just like Lord Nityananda had two wives, right? So Balaram had two wives. As the Gandharvas sang his glories, Lord Balaram enjoyed within the brilliant circle of young women. He appeared just like Indra's elephant, the lordly Airavata, enjoying in the company of she-elephants. There he is with his rasa dance. At that time, kettle drums resounded in the sky. Gandharvas joyfully rained down flowers, and the great sages praised Lord Balaram's heroic deeds. The Gandharvas and the singers and the Apsaras and the whole accompaniment. Then what happened? As his deeds were sung, Lord Hala Yudha, he fights with his hala, his plow, wandered as if inebriated among the various forests with his girlfriends. His eyes rolled from the effects of the liquor. The Lord then summoned the Yamuna river so that he could play in her waters. But she disregarded his command, thinking he was drunk. This angered Balaram, and he began dragging the river with the tip of his plow. There she is, Yamuna, not paying attention because he looked like he was inebriated. That was a problem. Lord Balaram said, "O sinful one, disrespecting me, you do not come when I call you, but rather move only by your own whim. Therefore, with the tip of my plow, I shall bring you here in 100 streams." And this is a celebrated pastime, so it has many paintings illustrating. Thus scolded by the Lord, the frightened river goddess Yamuna came and fell at the feet of Sri Balaram, the beloved descendant of Yadu. Trembling, she spoke to him the following words. This is from Srila Jiva Goswami, who says, the goddess who appeared before Lord Balaram is an expansion or shadow of Srimati Kalindi, one of Lord Krishna's queens in Dwarka. She is his vibhuti. Her husband is the ocean. Pretty far out, huh? What's a vibhuti? What's Vibhuti Yoga? Chapter 10, Bhagavad Gita. Opulences of the Absolute in English, but in Sanskrit it's Vibhuti Yoga. What's Vibhuti? Vibhuti is a manifestation of one of the opulences of Bhagavan found in this material world. Those of you that like to read Prabhupada's books, you can look. Canto 1, Chapter 3, the word Vibhuti appears, and its explanation is same as Chapter 10 Bhagavad Gita. It's a representation of Krishna in this world, representation of his unlimited spiritual opulences in this world. It's called a Vibhuti. So she is Krishna's Vibhuti, and her husband is the ocean, because she flows into the ocean. Yamuna comes in person, falling at the lotus feet of Balaram, another nice painting, and yet another nice painting. Rama, Rama, O mighty armed one, I know nothing of your prowess. With a single portion of yourself, Inkangshena, you hold up the earth as Shesha, or Shesha is Balaram's expansion. Shesha holds up the earth. What's at the bottom of like the whole universe is Shesha Nag. Holds up the whole universe, not just this earth planet or Bhumandala. So she's giving this transcendental glorification that by your Ekangshena, by your just a fraction of you, you hold up the whole universe. Another painting of the same. O soul of the universe, I didn't understand your position as the Supreme Godhead, Mahasankarshana, but now I have surrendered unto you, and you are always kind to your devotees. She's surrendering, and he is kind to his devotees, so he accepts her apology. My Lord, please release me. Another beautiful painting, same pastime. See in the background, there's the gopis who are dancing with him, and Kalindi coming before him. Thereupon Lord Balaram released the Yamuna and said, like the king of elephants, with his entourage of she-elephants, entered the river's water with his female companions. Nice drawing, same pastime. These drawings of this style, these are Shivaram Swami's from his book. He very kindly, very generously arranged for me to receive, so I can, because he knows I do these types of things. I really like the artist that illustrated his books. The Lord played in the water to his full satisfaction, and when he came out, goddess Kanti, Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, the wife of Sankarshana of the second Vyuha, presented him with blue garments, precious ornaments, and a brilliant necklace. O Lord, this is Hari Vangsha, another Vaishnav text describing this pastime. It's a celebrated pastime. O Lord, please accept as divine ornaments for your ears this single gold earring studded with diamonds and this primeval lotus called Padma. Kindly accept them, for this act of adornment is traditional. Lord Balaram dressed himself in the blue garments and put on the gold necklace. Anointed with fragrances and beautifully adorned, he appeared as resplendent as Indra's royal elephant. Thus, for Lord Balaram, all the nights passed like a single night as he enjoyed in Braja, his mind enchanted by the exquisite charm and beauty of Braja's young ladies. Beautiful paintings. So now we're going to hear about, after he finishes his visit to Braja, he's going to return. We just have 2 slides left, and we're done. Balaram, still wearing a traveler's dress, beautiful with a new garland on his chest, embraced Krishna. Seeing Balaram coming quickly, Krishna rose and offered him an excellent seat. Seeing him, Krishna asked him about the welfare of all his friends and the cows. Balaram answered his brother, who spoke sweetly, "Oh, Krishna, all those for whose good health you desire are fine." Then the two spoke on various subjects of former times in front of Vasudeva. Because they were in the assembly, general questions and answers were given. In private, Krishna asked about his gopis. So that's Balaram's visit to Vrindavan. Now, in the speaker is Shukadev Goswami. And Shukadev Goswami, we'll find as we go along, his narration is quite spontaneous, because that's the platform of bhakti. He's on the raga spontaneous platform. So he doesn't follow things chronologically. He follows things according to his heart. And he narrates as his heart moves. Some of it's chronological, some of it's not. But it's very logical. It's spiritually logical, although not chronological. Because it's all there, but sometimes it's not in chronological order. But in general, one of the contrasting features of a Purana and an Itihasa is that Puranas are not chronological. They're not bound by chronology. And Itihasas like Mahabharata and Ramayana, they're largely chronological. There are some sections in Mahabharata that refer back to ancient history, or in Ramayana that refer back to previous history. But the events flow, even when those narrations are given, they're in chronological order. And Puranas are not like that. They don't have that same constraint or boundary. And especially Shukadev Goswami. He is very spontaneous, and especially when it comes to Vrindavan. So he's going to speak some more about Balaram. In fact, this evening, Balaram's further activities of Balaram. And then later, Shukadev Goswami has to tap him on the shoulder and say, "Can you go back and do some chronological things, please?" They're a good team, Shukadev Goswami and Maharaj Parikshit. Good questions, good answers. But the revelation is transcendental rasa, transcendental potencies of Krishna, and of course Balaram, and the loving associates, and the type of love that they have. So even when, for example, even when their feelings of separation are there, there's arrangements by Krishna to help them deal with their intense feelings of separation. And sometimes Krishna purposefully, just to see what they're going to do. There's some very beautiful paintings of this. Krishna just like disappears. But then he watches what they're going to do because he enjoys their feelings of loving separation. There's some beautiful painting. Krishna's up in a tree, or Krishna's hiding behind a tree, and he's watching what they're going to say, what they're going to do, what their emotions are, and then he shows up, and then meeting again. It's loving exchange. He enjoys and they enjoy in a very unique way. Okay, so that's our chapter for this midday, chapter 65. Let's see if there's some discussion. Anyone would like to bring up the topic? You want to change it? He's doing this too much technology from my brain. Anyone?
Maharaj, I have a question. Was Srimati Radhani part of the gopis who were inquiring about Krishna with Balaram?
There's no indication. Perhaps, but we don't have any indication.
The other one is like I was always wondering the specific pastime of Lord Balram dragging Yamuna. We read how Yamuna also was one of the gopis of Krishna when he was in Vrindavan. And normally, what I've heard is Balram tries to stay away from the gopis of Krishna while he was there, while they both were in Vrindavan. So that said, I'm just trying to understand how did he resort to the act of dragging her.
Well, it's pastime, and what we heard from our acharyas is that she's an expansion of, not a gopi of. And so it's part of part of Balaram's pastime because he wanted and she was denying or defying. And so it's a pastime. And it ended up, the pastime wise, of her glorifying Balaram. He didn't punish her, he just scolded her.
There's a question online by Sri Padma Manjari Mataji. Can a devotee who still have anarthas aim to reside in Vrindavan? I heard that if we are still contaminated, it would be offensive to live in Vrindavan because
Should
of
be what?
it would be offensive to live in Vrindavan because of indirect offenses.
Well, that's a pretty high bar. You can't. There are five things that help one to become purified, but one of them gets eliminated because until you're purified, you're not eligible for it. Does that make sense? So, I don't know. Those of us who are not yet purified, we're advised to carefully guard against offense. Don't worship a deity until you're a pure devotee. Don't hear Srimad Bhagavatam until you're a pure devotee. Don't chant the holy name. And we're advised to avoid offenses when chanting the holy name. We're advised, there's dham aparads, we're advised to avoid offenses when we visit the Holy Dham or reside in the Holy Dham. But it's not that everyone that lives there is a pure devotee. They're becoming purified by contact. And ideally, or at least in principle, one should be careful to avoid offenses. So I'm not agreeing with the premise. Until you're a pure devotee, you can't reside in Vrindavan, or should not. Anything? Anyone? Yes, behind you?
So question, I mean, what is the core message or learning for us through this pastime? Because Lord Krishna, why is he keeping himself away and sending Balarama to kind of pass on his message? And also, I mean, what is that we should take away from this?
Uh, Understanding, to understand, you know the verse from Bhagavad Gita? Janma karma cha me divyam evam yo veti tatvataha chakva deham punar janma naiti mameti sarjana. You familiar with that verse?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it sounds like ABC. Just understand Krishna and punar janma na. But it's a little more than just check a box. So it's the benefit, the takeaway for you and for me is to understand the nature of Krishna. The nature of Krishna is he's loving. And sometimes the ways of love are hard to understand. Transcendental love is hard to understand. So it's hard to understand why he wouldn't go. So the takeaway is to understand the nature of his love. This is to understand the nature of Krishna, understanding which Purnarjanma na. So he doesn't go. There are two reasons given already. And our acharyas probably have a number more, but the two primary ones, well, I say one of them is a secondary one. Vasudeva and Devaki didn't want him to go for reasons, if he goes, he might not come back. So they were attached. One of the answers to that our acharyas give is the residents of Dwarka speak about Krishna periodically not being there in Dwarka. So Krishna periodically leaves Dwarka and goes to Hastinapur, for example. And he comes back again. So he goes back and forth from Dwarka, although they're very attached to him. When it came to the Rajasuya Yagya, that's chapter 70. When the Rajasuya Yagya was being proposed, Krishna went. But when he went with his wives, he went with his family, he went with his servants. He just left a few people back in Dwarka, Ugrasena, to look after things. And a few others to protect the city. They wanted to go too, but Krishna. So they're attached to him. I'm countering. They didn't want him to go because he might not come back. Well, he had special affection for the Pandavas, but superlative affection for the residents of Braja. So they didn't want him to go for fear but it's a transcendental emotion. So he's bound by the love of his devotees, but more importantly is, as mentioned, if he went, then the demons that were still outstanding, we heard the list of those who were still outstanding, they would go and attack. Because that was just dear. So they would attack Dwarka, but there was military to protect Dwarka. And of course there was Krishna. But military to protect Dwarka and Ugrasena and so forth. But a deeper understanding is this love and separation. If you really want to get into it, read Brihat Bhagavatamrita Part 1 and the final section. In the final section of Brihat Bhagavatamrita Part 1, Narada's on a quest to find the greatest recipient of the mercy of the Lord. And at the end, Krishna gathers the queens to tell them what his feelings are for the residents of Vrindavan, especially the gopis. He wants them to know. He's been waiting for the chosen, opportune time, and he tells them. So if you want to know, it's there. Sanatana Goswami gives the detail, but he says, one of the things he says, they're maintaining their lives by a thread that my promise I'll return. And if I return and then don't return to Dwarka, they'll die in Dwarka. If I don't go, they still have that promise to hold them intact. Because if I leave, then they'll be unable to maintain their lives. So it's all rasa related, the rasa of love and separation, and it's very deep and profound. It's not easy to understand. To understand Krishna and therefore go back home, Purnarjanma na. It's not like, okay, got it. He's the source of everything. We're from him. Everything's from him. Now I know about Krishna. I'm going back to Godhead. The rasa feature is needed to understand the nature of Krishna's love. So it doesn't make sense to us. If you love somebody, you go and spend time with them. And it's hard for them to make, like Balaram said, if Krishna knew the kind of feelings that you have, he wouldn't be able to maintain himself. But he knew. He is omniscient. So then how can he stay away if he's omniscient? He knows what their feelings are. It's rasa. It's a very intensified feeling of love. And then he came back. And when he came back, according to our acharyas and Vishnu Purana, he stayed for 2 months. And at the end of that 2 months, he sent them back to the spiritual world. There's some detailed explanations. But it's love and separation.
Thank you.
Profound. Because we wouldn't do that. So why is Krishna doing that? Because I wouldn't do that. You have something?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So
Yes, you're going to have to turn the speaker. Go ahead.
you mentioned that when Krishna went back to Vrindavan, before he returned, before those 2 months, he sent everybody to Golok Vrindavan. So what happened to all the residents of the Dwarka? When the entire Yadu dynasty was destroyed, and Krishna left the planet. So what happened to the residents of Dwarka?
There's different things. Different things. Some went back to similarly, they returned to the spiritual Dwarka. Not Goloka, but Dwarka, in the spiritual world. Some, like his queens, were put in the care of Arjuna to take and be placed under the care of the next king. So they were placed in the care of the great grandson of Krishna. And then they went back to Godhead after hearing, there's a whole long Leela of, then they went back to Godhead. So different things happened depending upon his relation with them and their relation with him. And, further experiences. It's all rasa related, what he wanted them to experience. And what they wanted to experience. So when the pastimes concluded, they went to their respective original position. when Krishna's Balaram departed, there's a very interesting pastime of how Balaram departed. Knowing that Krishna is going to depart, he departed first. Krishna is getting ready to depart. Uddhava comes for final messages. Krishna then tells his chariot driver Daruka, go back immediately. He gave him some service so he could continue his life. I'm going to leave. 7 days after I leave, the whole of Dwarka is going to sink back into the sea. So those that are remaining, because many of them have been annihilated at Prabhas, those that are remaining, they'll be underwater. So let them know they have to vacate because Dwarka is going underwater. And then the rest, the queens were taken by Arjuna, etc. They're very involved, but it's all Leela because they're his eternal associates. So they went on to being his eternal associates by his various arrangements. Yes.
So Maharaj, the Srimad Bhagavatam talks about Krishna's pastimes in this material universe. It's limited to that. It does not talk about anything that happened prior to Krishna's appearance in the spiritual world. But in one of the books, Bhakti Purushottam Swami Maharaj reveals...
Wait. Krishna's appearance in the spiritual world?
No. Before Krishna's appearance in the material world.
Yeah.
So Bhakti Purushottam Maharaj reveals that even prior to that, there was this 100-year curse that was put on Radharani by her brother, where there would be separation between her and Krishna. And that was one of the reasons why Krishna could not return to Vrindavan till that 100 years was over. But we don't find this reference anywhere in any of the Acharya's writings. How much credence can we put to this?
Well, not 100%. My nature is on the conservative side. That is to say, I don't like to repeat something that I haven't heard. And there may be something in other Puranas that I don't hear our acharyas saying. I won't mention some other examples. There are some other examples. And I'm not very comfortable with those other examples, having not heard them confirmed. Because it's not in the Bhagavatam, and it's not from our acharyas, it's from something over there and something over there. So your question was how much credence to put into statements like that. I would want to do some further research to see if there is such a reference made by our acharyas before commenting. But if there's no reference from our acharyas, I wouldn't put very much credence in it. Yeah. So let's just for sake of discussion, if you or I or someone cannot find a reference to this, then we don't put much credence in it. We don't poo-poo it, but we don't put much credence in it. Because it's in the Puranas, but we don't put much credence in it. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you very much for coming. I hope you enjoy Krishna's pastimes. May you all remember Krishna.